Critical, and mental health experts are warning that hospitals are not ready to take care of violent mental health patients without the support of the police. A planned change to how police respond to call-outs has been delayed to ensure hospitals are properly prepared. Assistant Police Commissioner Mike Johnson explained that only 5 health districts were ready for the shift, while the remaining 8 needed more work. The change would involve police spending no more than an hour with mental health patients in emergency departments unless there was immediate safety risk. Police are also aiming to ensure detained individuals are taken to a mental health facility within 30 minutes of their assessment. The Australasian College of Emergency Medicine agreed that a health response is needed, but emphasised the importance of having adequate support in EDs to manage violent patients. The Mental Health Foundation's Chief Executive Shaun has criticised the inadequate preparation, citing lack of investment, along with a lack of clear measures to support EDs in managing these patients. And he joins me now. Shaun, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Shaun, what is your main concern here?
Well, look, this is just the thin end of the wedge. There is a progressive program of the police withdrawing from their role in supporting mental health call-outs. So EDs is really just one small step. And, we're talking about 70,000 call-outs a year. The police play a major role in crisis response in mental health. So them pulling out of that before an alternative service or series of services are actually in place just beggars belief. It's just, it will be an absolute disaster for everybody. So we want, Taiho, we want to stop this process and have the full plan in place. We want to see the funding for the services. We want to see the training for the additional staff that will be needed, because there will need to be additional staff. And we want to see those services up and running before the police pull out. I mean, that is only common sense.
So it's being rushed in your eyes, obviously, Shaun. Do you think this is something that, I know the government, this current government, was something that they wanted to see done. Do you think it's more of a couple of years that we're looking at?
Oh, look,
possibly.
Yes, absolutely. Look, EDs, are not the only part of the system that's affected. Other mental health services are all going to be affected. And, unless you've been living under a rock, you would know that our health system is desperately short of staff, and particularly our mental health services are desperately short of staff. And so it's just not ready for this change. I mean, everybody agrees that the police are not health professionals, and
sure,
ideally we have a health response, but you've got to have that response ready before you pull the police out. So officers spending, this is how they see it, spending an hour sitting with patients before they're assessed. They say that feels like a reasonable period. I mean, does that sound reasonable to you? Well, let's remember that the government has set a target of people, anybody, being seen in EDs within 6 hours. That's what will be seen as good, is that you only have to wait 6 hours in an ED. So, an hour in that context is not a good thing and is not realistic.
You mentioned, the EDs are just kind of, a part of one small step of this whole issue. They also, you're talking also when police would turn up to a mental health call out, and we look at what happened recently with the 11-year-old girl who was mistakenly identified as a 20-year-old, and then the following, what happened after that. The police have kind of been blamed a little bit for that. But then, as you just said, they're not mental health experts. I mean, it's not laid fully at their feet, of course, but you're talking about those situations as well.
Yeah, no, look, absolutely. But, at least I mean, that I think demonstrates that you can't just go, well, the police shouldn't be there and ED should handle it, because the mistakes in that horrible case carried on through ED. And in the report that the Waikato Health did, showed clearly that staff were saying that ED was understaffed and too busy. So, that's the context in which we are trying to withdraw police support. Now, obviously, that was a terrible situation from start to finish. But you don't solve it by pulling the police out and having nothing to replace that. It may have been a much better result for that 11-year-old girl who was autistic if there had been a health response to her being out at night, on a bridge.
Yeah.
But we don't have that response at the moment. It's not there. So you can't take the police away.
No. Shaun, you've mentioned that we are unprepared, and obviously what you're talking about shows that compared to, say, the UK. Can you explain a bit more of how their approach differs from ours, or what they have done?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And, like the government often talks about the Humberside model, which is the model that happened in the UK where the police pulled out. But in that situation, the British government put in £1 billion of investment into developing new services. They had specialist mental health ambulances, they had specialist essentially mental health emergency centres where people could be taken to instead of an ED. They had a whole range of services that needed to be staffed, needed people that were trained, and they needed to be ready in order to pick up that slack. And even with that £1 billion of investment, the mental health system says that it didn't really fill the hole left by police leaving. We haven't heard any number for investment in alternative services in New Zealand. So look, we absolutely are actually on the side of the police. We know they're hard pressed, but we're just kind of, we've got a petition at the moment, and if people go to the Mental Health Foundation website, they can sign the petition. We're saying stop and get all the ducks lined up before you go ahead with this process that is going to affect, when you think of, the family, the friends of those 70,000 people a year, this is going to affect, well over 100,000 people every year. It's too important for us to rush it. It's very important that we get it right.
Gosh, it does, Shaun. It's concerning because, as you've mentioned, £1 billion, and even that still wasn't enough. Sadly, and how many, with our health services, every single part of it is screaming for money, from the nurses to specialists to you name it, it. And it's just so frustrating because where is that money coming from? I agree. We do need to have alternative measures before we pull away the police. But do we, Shaun, where's that money coming from?